Hello and welcome to our listeners out there. I'm so glad everyone was able to find us and join us today. My name is Don Putkela.
And I'm Angela Putkela.
And this is Welcome to Livingston, where we talk about everything Livingston County, a little bit of real estate, but a lot about just what's going on in the county and some businesses in the county. And we are so happy to welcome you guys today, and we're excited about this episode. We are actually going to be talking to Justin, who owns a company called Pro Billiards, and we're going to be talking to him about game rooms, pool tables, and everything included in that. So welcome to our show this morning.
Thanks, Don. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, why don't we just start off a little bit, if you wanted to tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I grew up playing pool. I mean, one of the most common questions that I get from people that say, wow, you work on pool tables for a living. How's that work? You know, and it's funny because my dad bought a pool table used from a company in the Royal Oak area back in the 1980s, and 7-foot bar table, and they muscled it down the stairs themselves. And I watched them, struggle this 750-pound, 800-pound pool table down the flight of stairs at our home into the basement, and fell in love with the game. I was barely tall enough to look over the top rails, and so my dad got a couple of milk crates and taught me how to play. And as a kid, you look up to your parents, your father. Most boys look up to dad, and I did. I was proud of I loved watching him play pool. He was a pretty good pool player. So fell in love with the game and started playing competitively as a teenager, and pretty good pool player. I didn't go pro, but good enough to hang, And my mom's got a photo of me. It's kind of funny, shooting pool in front of my dad's table, just this big, huge grin on my face. And, I was probably 10 years old. It was the greatest thing. But and really, it's all I wanted to do as a kid was play pool and work on pool. Well, I fell in love with the mechanics of it. I mean, they're kind of intriguing. They're 800 to 1,000-pound jigsaw puzzles.
Right.
So
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. For
So,
those of us that don't speak pool table.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And, most people have seen a pool table inside of a bar. If you've been in a bar or pool hall,
Right.
Most people know someone that's got one in their basement. But there's so many aspects to them. It's not just a piece of furniture. It's not just a game table. In most cases, it's both. Functioning art, and the differences in quality between an entry-level pool table and top-of-the-line table are night and day. So,
Right. And I know pool halls used to be a lot more popular than they are now. I mean, 20 years ago, that was the big thing for the bars that they were putting in pool halls.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's weird. Things change. I mean, every sport's had transitions. Kind of a neat thing most people don't realize is, if you think about it, back 120 years ago, let's say the end of the 20th century, late 1800s, there was no televisions, and most major cities, although they had some sports teams, like some football teams, baseball teams, we didn't have access to them like today. You turn on ESPN and you watch the football game that's being played in Los Angeles, or you watch a baseball game that's being played in New York. Every large city, every small city, every medium-sized city had pool tables in the saloons, in the hotels, in the barber shop, in the cigar store. And believe it or not, back in the late 20th century, billiards was considered the largest fan-based sport in the world. And
Wow.
kind of a weird statistic is the top 5 sports of today: baseball, basketball, football, hockey, and soccer. In that era, there was more billiard fanatics than there were those 5 sports combined.
Wow.
Of course, that was then. This is now.
Yeah.
Right.
You mentioned the lack of pool halls. There was a big kind of a resurgence in 1961 after the movie The Hustler.
Okay.
Oh, makes sense.
Yep. And then again in 86, I believe, the sequel, The Color of Money,
Right.
with Tom Cruise, and of course Paul Newman again playing Fast Eddie Felsen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But so there's been a couple explosions in the game since then, but sadly we live in a tech era where the kids want to play on their phones.
It's the screens.
Yeah. There are still a large amount of people like myself that enjoy the game, that love playing. Sadly, it has dropped off, but one thing that's kind of changed is we have large homes, much larger homes than back in the say pre-World War II.
Absolutely, that's a big trend.
And so if you've got a family that's got a larger home, a larger area, a lower level where there's room for a pool table, there's a pretty good chance they're going to go, well, what do we put in this big space? Well, let's get a pool table, because when we were kids, we
That
got a
was
pool.
what you do.
They were in the basements, right? And it's interesting, the houses that we go into, when you go into the older homes where you have those older baby boomers and such, and you go down into the basement and there's a pool table sitting there, but it's got boxes piled on top of it, and it's it's where they do the jigsaw puzzles and such sometimes.
Yeah, well, it's the best place to wrap Christmas presents, and best place to fold laundry in the house.
There you go.
So
Multifunctional.
yeah.
Right. So I guess that leads me into my first question of, we're in real estate, and we so often, they don't know what to do with the pool table, or they're going to move. And the question is, where do I start? So why don't we talk a little bit about what goes into moving a pool table and why it's important to have someone like yourself, a professional,
Not do it yourself. Yeah.
Well, probably the most prolific point that I would make is, I mentioned it earlier, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, they're half-ton jigsaw puzzles. It is literally the largest item in most cases that you'll move in and through your home. A real pool table, not the big box store Christmas time, $1,000 purchase. A real pool table that's got a slate top. You're talking about 3/4 of the weight, approximately. The slate play surface sitting at 95% of the height. That makes up, the majority of the weight. Ridiculously high center of gravity. Right. So, number one, it's got to be beefy and heavy. If that frame isn't built well enough to support the stone, it's going to topple over. I'm 5'10", I weigh about 200 pounds. If my hair weighed 150 pounds and the rest of my body tried supporting it, I couldn't stand up.
Right.
So, reason that's important is you look at how pool tables are built. If you've got a pool table that has a beefy frame, solid hardwood, stainless steel nuts and bolts in the frame, not a press board import, not to pick on any specific countries, but there's a couple of countries over in Asia that pump out a lot of stuff that's price driven and not necessarily well built. They're not necessarily known for their furniture quality.
And that's a very big deal, because if you're making a purchase like that, you want something that's going to last, that's going to do well. I imagine a poor table really affects the experience.
Yeah, Angela, you hit it right on the head. You pay for what you get in most industries, and that crosses pretty much
universal.
The entire universe. You pay for what you get, So what I've told people for years is, if you have a pool table in your home and you're moving from house A to house B, whether you're buying it off a friend, you're inheriting grandma and grandpa's pool table, or you're moving from a small house into your larger family home, or vice versa, from a large family home, kids are off to college, empty nesters, and you're downsizing. Who do you want in your house? Do you want an established company with 2 decades of experience, on-staff mechanics, liability insurance, and workman's comp? Or do you want to hire somebody off Craigslist that's got a couple buddies in a pickup truck working for cash and a case of beer?
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the other things I learned is the whole balancing of the table. That, we know that not every floor is 100% level, but you don't realize it till you're looking at a pool table that being level is so important. That if you're just moving it yourself, even if you move the pool table 4 feet across the room, well, now it's not level anymore.
Right. Yep. Very common question I get from people. Sadly, especially here in the last few months, we've had some flooding in Metro Detroit, and not so much in Livingston County, thankfully, but still, there's people that listen to this podcast that will say, yeah, wow, we had some water get in. We had to replace the flooring. Imagine having a 900-pound wooden stone piece of furniture taking up 32 to 35 square feet of that space. You got to move it. So what do you do? Do you just grab it, get 6 guys, and pick it up and move it over? You can. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, you could pick your dog up by his ears and his tail. You're probably going to break him.
Yeah.
So there's a couple scenarios where, even if you're moving it a few inches or a few feet, where you have to consider what kind of table is it. We spoke with the producer earlier about a bar table that was moved years ago, and with some friends. And bar tables are 1-piece cabinet, 1-piece slate. Those, believe it or not, you can actually get a bunch of people and pick them up and scoot them over. They're made for commercial play. Now, can you damage it? Yeah. But the difference is, a furniture-style table that's got a 3-piece slate, full nut and bolt assemble in the frame, they're made to come apart and go back together. There's not really a safe way to move them assembled.
Right.
So sadly, you can't. You have to hire, or gamble on the fact that you might be handy, take it apart, remove the top rails, remove the leather pockets without tearing them, remove the billiard fabric without tearing it, And I can't tell you how many times I've had people call me and say, yeah, I thought I could do it. I went on YouTube, and wow, that's a lot more work than I thought it would be.
Right.
So now we've got a pool table that's got broken top rails and damaged pockets or torn fabric, and it's going to cost me more to fix it than it would have to have Pro Billiards come out and take it apart and put it back together, you know.
Right. And that leads me to my next point in terms of repairs and such. So you guys are actually repairing or fixing a table for me right now that we're going to have brought over to our house. And I didn't realize, you know, you go to get a table and you're like, hey, this looks perfect. And it does work good, but if you want to bring it back to exactly where it is, what kind of repairs do you guys normally see in these tables that you're picking up and moving?
That's a great question, Don. Well, you know, something as basic as it may just need a light cleaning. I've had clients over the years that have assumed that you need to replace the fabric. I had a guy a few weeks ago that called, and it was kind of sad because he said, well, you know, I hired these guys, and I found out the hard way that I probably should have hired you. And I said, okay, what happened? And he said, well, they gave me a price, and it seemed reasonable. Well, when they got there, they said, oh, well, the cloth is glued and stapled on the felt, is the slang term, the billiard fabric, the billiard cloth. It's glued and stapled on, and we can't reuse it. And this gentleman says, he's like, oh, okay, you're the expert, I guess. Well, now what? And he said, well, look at this swatch card. You pick a color. It's $350 to have that redone, and then it's another $250 to have me come back. Well, guess what, guys? You got taken because you don't have to replace the fabric when you take a pool table apart. That's what a lot of these guys do is they'll charge you hidden fees, or they'll figure out a way to give you a lowball number to get in your door and then charge you all these hidden costs. Sadly, he said after that it was $100 a stairwell and $3 a mile. And the reason he's calling me was because he paid the guy in cash, which, okay, cash. I've told people for years, if you want to pay cash, that's great. We're a business. We take cash, goes in the bank. Personal check has some protection. You can put a stop payment on it. You can cancel it if you need to. Pay with a credit card. That's a great way. Granted, there's a lot of companies that charge a few extra points for processing fees. That's the world we live in today. But there's some added benefits from a consumer standpoint, from a protection level, paying with a check to an established and reputable business.
Absolutely.
But yeah, sadly, the reason he was calling after that whole ordeal of this lowball number and then all these hidden costs, 2 to 3 times more what he was quoted over the phone, was the table wasn't level, and he couldn't get him to come back. And his words to me were, "I just want to play pool, and I'm sick of fighting with these guys."
Right.
And I kind of said, I remember talking to you. You said, well, you're more than the other guys. And I said, well, yeah, there's a reason for that. Who do you want? And that's kind of a tough lesson to learn, We're not that much more either. The funny thing is we actually guarantee we've got the best rate out the door, apples to apples,
right?
Because we don't charge all the hidden fees, and we have a warranty. If the table comes out of level, guess what? We've got a good reputation for a reason. We're going to come back and service it. And our reviews, hundreds of 5-star reviews, say that, hey, table, everything went great. Table come out of whack, and they came back and we-leveled it for free. These guys are great,
Right.
Absolutely. You're giving the bottom line price, which isn't that what everybody ultimately wants?
Oh, yeah. You want to know ahead of time. Absolutely. You want to know what you're getting yourself into. Yeah.
Right. And, interesting is that consultative approach, because when you guys came and got our table, they talked to me about bumpers for a while, and they said, what you have right now will work and it'll be good, but, the bumpers are a little hard, and if you want the table to play correctly, this is what you want to do, and, gave me that option, which, sometimes, like you said, you call up the other person, or if it's a felt or another thing, instead of it being consultative, making the person understand well, you need to do this.
Yeah, you don't have a choice because, otherwise it's not going to function properly.
Exactly.
There are instances where something like the cushion rubber or the fabric need to be replaced, and, as you put it, there's, you get a pool table, you don't really know going into it. You look at it and go, wow, it's a pool table. And, I got it from a family member or a friend, or I inherited it from, I bought it with a house sometimes even. They left it with the house because they didn't want to pay to have it moved. And wow, great, we can play pool. Well, wait a second. Now the ball's not bouncing off the rails. Why is it? It's making a funny thunk. Well, pool tables, there's quite a few different components. Of course, you have the frame, which is the main box of the table, the cabinet, the legs, and there's different styles of legs, the play surface. There's a real pool table is going to have slate. Now, there are tables from the 1960s, primarily in the early 70s, that made pool table play surfaces out of marble, but most are slate. The other components are going to be billiard fabric, which is a wool and nylon blend. We could have some fun talking about the billiard fabrics. There's so many different grades and colors. And
right.
The cushions which are made of rubber, either gum rubber extract with inert fillers, which are more of a composite rubber, and then 100% live gum rubber, which is a better rubber. It's going to last longer. It's going to be a little more reactive. Main benefit's going to last longer. It's not going to harden on you. And then the pockets. There's different style pockets, leather pockets, plastic drop pockets, or even a ball return where the ball's all run down to one end. Typically found on commercial models and bar tables.
Right.
But the question you asked earlier about components that need attention, most commonly is, of course, the felt. The billiard cloth or billiard fabric is what it's actually technically called. And then the cushion rubber. There's different profiles, there's different shapes and sizes, and it really just depends on the manufacturer. So.
Right, yep, because I know it's the little kids that come try to do the pool table and they skid the cue across the felt and there you go.
Oh yeah. I've seen some fabric get beat up pretty quick.
Right.
And sometimes it's kids. The funny thing actually is it's not the little guys as much. It's usually the teenagers, the young adults, because they're, you get somebody in their teens to early 20s. They're now big and strong enough to actually put some swing into the cue.
Like some real damage.
Well, they all want to learn how to jump the ball.
And that's actually, Don, you hit it right on the head. That's the scary part, is because most people don't understand that in a true jump, you're striking down on the cue ball. You're not undercutting it. And what most people think a jump is when you hit the bottom, the underside of the ball and scoop it up in the air. Well, a pool ball weighs 6 ounces, and you're shooting a pool stick with a sharp leather tip, basically right at the cloth, and scooping a 6-ounce ball. That's where the nicks and dings come from.
Got ya.
Sometimes it happens on miscues. If you're trying to crush the ball, you're trying to hit it too hard and you miscue, you can ding up the cloth. But it's also where the different grades of fabric will benefit in the long run, because if you decide you're going to have the fabric redone, going with a higher thread count per square inch and greater tensile strength fabric, it's going to last you longer. It's going to be money in the bank, better return on your investment.
Right.
Which makes sense. Now, you had mentioned that, in terms of the trends, pool gets, a little more popular, a little less.
Yeah.
How in the last 2 years has your business changed, and
Wow.
what do you see ahead? Like, what else does your company do?
Yeah, this little crazy thing happened big crazy thing happened out there, the pandemic. And, it's been a roller coaster ride. I have a lot of friends and family members that have been affected by it. Most of us know somebody who either owned a bar or a restaurant that was tremendously negatively affected by it. Most of us know someone who's gotten sick, and some of us know people who have passed away from COVID. And, we did what we were supposed to in the middle of March of last year, just like most Airfingers non-essential businesses.
Right.
We closed our doors for 2 months, and that hurt. That hurt bad. Not as bad as the restaurants, of course. We're still here. But we've got a 6,000 square foot retail store, an 8,000 square foot corporate office and warehouse space on 2 acres at the northwest corner of US 23-996 in Brighton. It's a pretty expensive piece of real estate.
Right.
And
very local, Livingston County.
Oh,
Welcome
yeah.
to Livingston, all of you people coming in from outside. Know that there's this great location that's worth checking out.
Oh, it's a neat place. Well, and the store's kind of like a museum. We've got about 275 pool tables in stock right now. Maybe around half of that are antique Brunswicks. And we've got about 40 tables on display in the store, along with shuffleboards, foosball, stick hockey, air hockey, darts, electronic dart boards, arcade games, pinball machines. I mean, a really good selection, a fantastic selection of pool cues. I think probably the best selection of pool cues in Michigan, if not the Midwest, in one location. And so this extremely, we're very invested into this, this space. And so when the governor said, "You're not essential," close, we did. And for 2 months, we wondered if we were going to open back up, what was going to happen. And the crazy thing is that even most of us remember, we weren't really that concerned about the financials as much as what's going to come out of this pandemic. Is this going to continue, or are we going to see something that's, good, better, best, worse than it is, worse than we thought? Yeah, we didn't know,
Right.
But we ended up making it. We reopened in the middle of May under some pretty strict precautionary protocol, like every place that opened back up, masks, gloves. When we were doing service calls, we've got 10 service mechanics on staff.
Oh, right in people's houses.
So exactly.
A lot to consider.
Yeah, when people call and say, "Hey, it's still going on, but we need to get back to some sort of normality, and we're moving, and we need a pool table moved. Well, we would show up and sanitize and gloves and masks, and then, literally, we were taking sanitation wipes with us and wiping the pool tables down when we're done working on them. That way the homeowners felt safe.
Right.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And, I just think it's so cool because in terms of the trends, real estate, everything shut down too. But then once it opened up, people realized how important their homes were. Yeah. And making their home what it needs to be to live their best life.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that enters in part of what you do.
I think that entertainment space is so much more important, especially when movie theaters closed down and you couldn't go to a bar, you couldn't go play pool someplace else, that I think you guys having that showroom is really interesting, because a lot of people, when they're going to remodel their lower level, or they're saying, hey, we're going to bring in a pool table, they really don't know where to start.
Right.
And it's never just a pool table. It's, it's shuffleboard, or it's I want the lamp, or it's even, the video games or the pinball machine. Just having some place to go look at that, because, before talking to you, I wouldn't have known where to start in terms of finding those items.
There's most of us with, all the knowledge and information and history of the entire universe is in the palm of our hands on our cell phones. So typically, like anything, if I'm looking, I'm gonna shop for a new car, I'm gonna shop for a new vacuum sweeper, I don't know, anything. I'm going to grab my phone and Google it and look at photos first, try to dig up some information. There's a tremendous amount of information on the internet about pool tables and game room products, shuffleboards, etc.
Right.
The problem, though, is that you're looking at photos and typically very well-written descriptions from the place that's trying to sell you something.
Exactly.
So to be able to go to a large showroom we specialize in one thing, to be able to walk in and see how they're built, see the actual fit and finish, and in a lot of cases actually try out the products. It's kind of a weird industry, because I would say, I mean this, I would bet you 90, if not 95% of retail locations in the United States that offer the sales of game room equipment, they're partnered with swimming pool and hot tub stores.
Really?
Yeah.
I was not aware.
There's probably around 25 different locations in Metro Detroit where you can walk into a store that's seasonal, home leisure stores that sell swimming pools and hot tubs, patio furniture, barbecue grills, swing sets, fireplaces. They sell pool tables at Christmas time too.
Oh, there we go.
And the same guys that are doing the swing set install and the patio table assembly and dropping off a hot tub are the guys that are trying to figure out how to assemble 400 to 600 components to a pool table and make sure it plays well and stays level. So the fact that we do one thing and one thing well, it's probably one of the most important reasons that people come and see us.
Right.
Yep. I mean, you're the best in the industry.
Yeah.
But, one of the interesting things I saw on your website that I wanted to make sure I asked about, because I've never seen it before, is the car pool table.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
It is. Do people actually get those?
Yeah, we've done quite a few of them. So there's two formats to the car pool table. A friend of mine, Tony Udegaard, is down in Florida, and this would have been somewhere 10, 12 years ago. Time flies when you're having fun. Maybe 15 years ago. I got a phone call, and he said, "Hey, Justin, I'm on your website, and I see you guys have a good reputation, some really good reviews." And he says, "I came up with something kind of neat. I took a scale model, or I should say I built a scale model body kit for a pool table with fiberglass panels and working headlights and taillights and chrome bumpers and wheels and tires." And I was like, "Oh, okay, this is crazy." He says, "Yeah, go on my website, check it out." And the first one was a 1965 Mustang. And one of the neatest things ever. It's a novelty,
right?
Cool. It's basically a real pool table that's got a fiberglass body kit and some headlights, taillights, chrome bumpers, wheels, and tires. And he said, "Well, we made a deal with Ford where it's a Ford licensed product, and part of the deal was they get serial number 001. It's going down to Ford headquarters in Dearborn, and I need it installed, and I'd like to know if you'd be willing to do it." And I said, "This is great. Absolutely. I'm actually pretty thrilled. I'm intrigued. I want to see it." So that's the first format. Now Tony at carpooltables.com, we're a dealer for him. They make the Ford Mustang, they make a Chevy Camaro, they make a Chevy Corvette, an older model, I think a 50s era Corvette, pretty cool. And they've made a couple pretty neat, this is going to be one of those times where you just go, yeah, this guy forgot he lost his train of thought here. So,
Oh, it's all good.
Carroll Shelby,
Okay.
Signature Series, Mario Andretti Signature Series.
Wow.
Yeah, so a couple of neat cars. And so that's the first format. They're cool. They're novelties. The other neat one that we have, which is on display in our showroom, a gentleman, a pretty large car collector in Walled Lake, called me up around 10 years ago and said, I've got kind of a neat one here. I've got a 1969 Volkswagen Microbus. And I was like, we're a pool table dealer. He's like, is this Justin? I said, yeah. And he goes, you're the guy I need to talk to. And I said, okay, what's up? And he goes, well, so I want you to come work on my Microbus. And I said, I'm not an auto mechanic, I'm a billiard mechanic. And he said, I know. So I've got a 9-foot Olhausen in pieces sitting next to a 1969 Microbus that's been cut in half. And so that was fun. And that's in our showroom right now. And that's a real 1969 Volkswagen Microbus with a 9-foot Olhausen playfield cross beams and then custom top rails to fit with the Volkswagen logo on the top and the headrail. So we put an inverter on it so we could plug it in, the lights and taillights.
Wow.
Headlights and taillights light up. It's pretty cool. I've actually joked I want to have, Chad Bowler, my general manager, is Mr. I can do anything. This guy's great. He can do anything. And I was teasing him, if we weren't so busy, we're going to put a receiver on the inside of the car where we can put a key fob on it. And when we hit the button, the headlights will light up and it'll honk.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's just kind of, it's a novelty.
It is a novelty.
There's a shoe for every foot. That one, the funniest thing, and I got to tell you, when we did the install, this gentleman's wife came out and she was laughing like, wow. And this guy had one of the neatest car collections. It was this massive pole barn. And she said what I was hoping she asked what I was hoping she would. She said to her husband, honey, how was he going to level it out? And I said, well, I brought a pancake compressor and we
leveled the tires.
We actually filled and we added air and took air out of the tires. It was so cool. Yeah,
that is so cool. Yeah. And that's the interesting things about the entertainment space nowadays. Yeah. And you can do just about anything. It just takes a little bit of money and such. And while you were telling the stories and such, it reminds me of some of the homes we went into. We went into one that had a full 1950s diner in the corner for their bar and such. And I can just imagine bringing in one of those older style pool tables that matches that. So, it's actually really cool, the type of things you do and such. And I know, like with the shuffleboards, you don't see those very often. That's probably growing in popularity now too, or? Yeah,
so there's been shuffleboards since the 1940s. Rockola, the jukebox company, actually made a couple of really high-end models, a 20-foot and a 22-foot model. More driven, of course, toward commercial play. Most people back then especially didn't have room. This is right after World War II. Didn't have room in their homes. A lot of small cookie-cutter homes popped up. But that was the late 40s. There was a little bit of a boost in the interest in the game in the 60s. The American Shuffleboard Company out of Union City, New Jersey, manufactured quite a few. Most of us that have gone up north as kids remember walking into the old dusty bar and seeing, a shuffleboard in the corner.
Up against the wall,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. So here lately, we've, over the last handful of years, the last 3, 4, 5 years, it's come back in popularity. And especially, again, Angela, you mentioned, over the last 2 years and what's changed with people wanting to stay home. Not everybody likes pool. Not everybody has room for a pool table. You need to have a space for the standard home size, about 13 and a half feet wide by about 17 feet long. That's to be able to walk around it with a 5-foot pool cue and not smack a wall.
Right.
So,
or a beam coming down.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, the stanchion poles are always coming to play, a lot of people have room against a wall, and we have shuffleboards in stock that start out at 9 feet and go up from there. The most common sizes are 12 and 14 feet for homes. 22 foot's a monster. You need a wall almost 30 feet long for a 22-foot shuffleboard, and they're mean to play on.
Right.
So,
not many people have them.
Yeah.
What else is popular now other than the pool tables, the shuffleboards? You listed all those great things in pinball is near and dear to my heart.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm very curious in terms of, what's hot? What's the right now?
That's a great question. The funny thing is, most of my clients, not all, I've had a few people walk in that are youngsters, the early 20s crowd, not many. And the reason for that, of course, is, and we know it, when we were kids, when I was 21, 22 years old, I didn't have a house, I didn't have a room, I didn't have a space to put a pool table. Yeah. Now that, I'm in my 40s, I've got, my wife, Emily, she's our CFO. I've got Sammy's a junior at Brighton High, and Addie's in 8th grade at Scranton. I'm old enough now, and I'm established enough to actually have a home that has room for some toys. So what I put in my lower level is stuff that I remembered enjoying as a kid. We have one of my favorite things is the 60-in-1 cocktail arcades. So I remember going to the pizzeria.
Yeah, you sit down on them and
absolutely.
You can
glass top, 2-seaters, and we have them that have 60 games where you can play Galaga, Miss Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, like all the big games, all the classics.
I think we're going to be taking a field trip with the kids.
Yeah.
Well,
that sounds good. And as a Livingston County resident and business owner, we try to ask all of our clients, what do you like best about Livingston County?
Wow, okay. So this is going to sound terrible. I always tease Emily. I tell her she's a Livingston County snob. And it doesn't mean she's stuck up. She always rolls her eyes because, it's funny because she says if we can't find it Brighton or Howell, we probably don't need it. And I mean that. That's true. I'm not just saying this for your sake. Yeah. But so one good example, is if the kids, we had to go, Sammy had prom this past Saturday, and she needed a dress. And so they didn't find what they liked here. They went online, they looked at some different styles. They didn't find the exact style that they wanted in Green Oak. And so we had to venture out a little bit, and she wasn't happy about it. It was kind of we love the people. I've had a lot of clients over the years. Keep in mind that just like you guys, I talk to people that are moving into Livingston County from outside of Livingston County.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times I've said I'm a Brighton resident. I've raised my kids here. And there's nothing against any other neighborhoods, any other cities or burbs, but there's something special about this area. People are proud to live here. People are good to each other. And I love it.
And that's why we started the podcast too, was because we found so many people are moving in. Mm-hmm. And in terms of saying welcome to Livingston, because they don't know about this culture that we have.
And I think even though we've been growing a lot in the last 20 years, it's managed to keep that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back for a second just because I had a quick question.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We had a client that one of the reasons, the house that he got into came with a really nice pool table. It came with a shuffleboard table up against the wall. His name was Rich, but because the people that were there were like, well, we don't want to move it. I know you guys move pool tables, but listening to the other types of stuff that you have and such, I mean, do you just want anyone, you don't just want anyone to move a pinball machine or a shuffleboard table or some of those other things. Do you have any advice for people that outside of the pool table have some of these items in their house and they're like, well, if I just have, these people move it, how do I know they're not going to break it?
Right.
Especially like with a pinball machine.
Oh yeah, exactly. So the funny thing is pretty much everything that we sell is specialty service. For example, foosball table, the good ones, the Valley Dynamo Tornadoes, these are 400 or 500 pound foosball tables. You don't just pick them up and move them around, flip them on their side, drag them out because you'll drop them and break them. So they actually, in most cases, you have to take them apart to some extent. Pinball machines are very fragile primarily. Now we're talking about, and just to be completely upfront, I'm not a pinball mechanic. I have a guy that I hire who's a very, very good pinball and arcade mechanic. Any pinball or arcade machine that we sell out of the store, we have shopped. And that's a kind of an industry term for having him come in, take it all apart, fix everything, replace the bands, replace the fuses, replace the bulbs. A lot of times upgrade from the old school lighting to LED lighting so it's going to last, less maintenance.
Right.
And then he'll put a warranty on that. But from a moving aspect, extremely high liability. They're fragile. These are very complex units. So you've got mechanical and electronic components that if it's jostled around can get damaged or, and then either way you're going to have somebody come back in and fix when in the first place, if you hire to have moved properly, you won't have to worry about that.
Right. So I guess the moral there is, do some research on those items and just don't let the the teenagers that are coming in move them.
Yeah, you don't, and exactly. You don't necessarily want the general movers moving it. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've had people call me. That one of the funniest stories I've ever had, and I shouldn't say funny, it was awkward, but it was kind of an I told you so moment. So this gentleman called me and he said, I need a pool table moved, and I quoted him. What I always do is I don't just pluck a number out of the sky. Don, you remember when you called me, I said, well, let's send me a photo. I said, I'll text you my card. You text me some photos. I'll know what it is. And usually what I'll say just to have fun with the client and also to show that I'm knowledgeable enough in my industry is I'll say, don't send me the nameplate. Just send me parts to the table and I'll tell you everything about it. I'll tell you the make, the model,
right,
what year it is. And I've had so many people over the years go, wow, how do you do that? And I laugh and say, well, you know, when I started in this industry, there was no cell phones. And I used to have to do it without photos. I would ask questions and go, okay, now walk around to the far side, look over on the underside of that leg. You're going to see a tag that says Wolverine Billiards, Ferndale, Michigan. And they go, holy cow, how'd you do that? You know, so it's kind of fun. I'm like, I'm looking through your basement window right now, a mind reader. So,
right.
So yeah, no. But this gentleman called me. That story I was going to tell you is he called me and he said, I need a pool table moved. And I said, great, send me, I'll text you my card. You text me a couple photos. And I called him back and I said, okay, here's the make, here's the model. It needs to be completely disassembled. Here's what we're going to do. I'll walk you through all the details. It's a tremendous amount of work. For, you know, if it was me and one of the warehouse guys, it'd be an 8-hour job. For 2 experienced mechanics, it's still a long half day. And you're literally disassembling, loading up, transporting, moving back in, and reinstalling the most complex, again, jigsaw puzzle you'll ever take apart and put back together. Well, in the game room industry.
Right.
So moral of the story, point of the story is he called me back a few weeks later and said, okay, Justin, I got a problem here. And I said, what happened? He goes, well, after I got your quote, I talked to my mover and he said, oh, we'll do it for you. We'll do it for like $500. We'll do it for less. And so he said, great. They unloaded everything, got everything loaded up, unloaded everything. And the mover said, where do you want the pool table? And I said, oh, put it under the billiard light in the lower level. And he said that was the first thing on the truck and the last thing to come off the truck. And 10 minutes later, they're like, all right, we're all done. And he said, oh, okay, that was quick. And so he ran down, so the homeowner ran downstairs, right. And there, under the billiard light, is his pool table stacked up in pieces.
Wow.
And literally, he said this. He said, wait a second, you have to put it back together. And the mover said, I don't know how to do that. Call Pro Billiards.
Wow.
And so he was like, oh my gosh, he charged me $500. So we went back out and assembled everything. Now, to add insult to injury, the guys that took it apart shredded his billiard fabric. So not only was he paying us to do the hard part, the assembly, but now paying for the fabric, it cost him a lot more in the long run.
Right. Wow.
No, absolutely. I mean, so much to think of. So if anyone is interested in your services, where's the location of the store and how can they contact you? What contact information do you want us to?
Oh, yeah. So our website is, it's kind of fun. We're a pool table service company first and foremost. So our website is, it's real easy. It's pooltableservice.com. It's been around for a long time. So we've got simple information about the company. We've got a massive amount of reviews that go back 20 years. Our retail store is located on Old 23 between Spencer and Grand River, so just north of the I-96 viaduct. It's on the east side of Old 23. It is by appointment, which is kind of neat. Most people don't realize that. I've had a lot of people, especially here in the last year and a half, that have called and said, I was on your website. I see it's by appointment. Is that because of COVID? And I laugh and say, well, it's not funny, but I say, no, we've always been by appointment. So if you want to stop in, we're there Monday through Friday from 8 to 4.
Okay.
I stay late on Wednesday nights, usually every Wednesday, and then we're there on the weekends by appointment. We're not staffed on the weekends. We're not staffed on evenings. But we still ask for people to call and say, hey, are you going to be there this afternoon at 1 o'clock? I'd like to stop in. That way, if 2 people walk in at the same time, we're giving, instead of trying to bounce back and forth between you, we can actually give you some dedicated time. So
that's true. That's a great point.
Wonderful.
For service. So good. Excellent. Yeah. Well, we appreciate that you were able to join us today and talk about everything.
Yeah, and I would say to everybody out there, check them out online. We can say firsthand that they do an amazing job coming out, taking the pool table apart and such. And, just check them out online, and you can find all the information in our show notes as well. We're on our podcast is on Apple, Spotify, Google, and we just thank you so much for joining us today, and we really appreciate your time. So thanks a lot.
Great chatting with you guys.
Excellent. Cool. Thanks so much. Welcome to Livingston.
Yeah.